All right, so Ripley's back, huh? 200 years after,
Yeah.
that fiery ending in Alien 3. She's not just alive. She's, well, let's just say things get a little wild with the whole cloning thing and mixing human and alien DNA. I mean, talk about a bananas
It
premise.
it really is, grabbing you right from the start. It's like they took a very definitive ending and said, nope, we're going in a completely new direction. I mean, a hybrid Ripley. That's bold, to say the least.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. That's Alien Resurrection, the 1997 film.
Yeah.
We've got a ton of stuff to go through here, mostly from IMDb. The main movie page, those FAQs, which always have some interesting tidbits, full cast and crew list, user reviews. People have some thoughts. We even have some extra trivia and some external reviews to add to the mix.
Yeah, so we're gonna, as always, sort through it all, figure out what makes this particular Alien film tick. I think it's safe to say it's a movie that gets people talking.
Oh, yeah. You probably heard it all. Some people love it. Action-packed, fun ride, and then, well, let's just say some are less enthusiastic. But we're here to give you the full picture, how it all came together, who was behind it, and how it landed with, well, everyone. So let's start with the basics.
Yeah, good idea. Get everyone on the same page.
Okay, so Alien Resurrection hit theaters November 26, 1997. Now for a sci-fi thriller, aliens and all, it's actually pretty short, clocking in at 1 hour and 49 minutes.
According to IMDb, it's listed as action, horror, sci-fi. Seems about right, given, the whole mix of, well, everything going on. And it's rated R, which, let's be honest, pretty standard for this franchise.
For sure. Now, to bring this Resurrected Ripley to the screen, it took about $75 million. And it did pretty well,
Yeah.
not a flop by any means. It grossed $161 million worldwide. 47.8 million of that was just from U.S. audiences.
Yeah, so not quite reaching, the heights of Aliens, but it held its own. And it did get some recognition, 7 wins, 28 nominations across, different awards.
So let's talk about who brought this particular vision to life. The director at the helm was Jean-Pierre Jeunet, a French filmmaker well known for films like Delicatessen and later on the much-loved Amélie.
Now, this is fascinating. Apparently, Junet didn't speak much English during filming, so imagine directing a big Hollywood sci-fi film and needing translators on set all the time. That's quite a feat of communication and, collaboration.
Yeah, really incredible. And the screenplay, that was Joss Whedon, building on those characters, the iconic ones created by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. But here's where things get interesting. Despite, his script being pretty much intact throughout production, Whedon later said he was disappointed with how the film turned out.
Yeah, his take was that the execution, the overall tone, just wasn't what he envisioned. He was going for something playful, almost tongue-in-cheek, whereas Jeunet, well, he went for a much more straightforward approach. It's interesting because Whedon's even said that this experience, it partly inspired him to create Firefly, which, has some thematic similarities to that crew dynamic we see on the Betty in Resurrection.
It's amazing how things like that can, well, turn into something creative. And the cast was impressive. Of course, we have Sigourney Weaver back as Ripley, and she was joined by the very talented Winona Ryder as Call, and Dominic Pinion, always expressive, as Vrees, Ron Perlman, Gary Dourdan, Michael Wincott, Brad Dourif, all in key roles.
And of course, always fun to imagine what could have been. Angelina Jolie actually turned down the role of Call, and Bill Murray was even considered for Dr. Wren. Would have been a very different film, I think.
Oh, yeah, for sure. On the music side, the atmosphere that was crafted by composer John Frizzle, he reportedly spent 7 months on the score, really immersing himself in the sonic world.
And visually, we have Darius Kanji, the cinematographer, to thank for that. He did some unique things like adding silver to the printing process to, enrich the darker colors, give them a kind of metallic look. And he used this electric blue tint for the underwater scenes, which really makes them stand out.
Now, let's not forget Sigourney Weaver, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes is a co-producer. One reason they didn't film in England was apparently her preference to stay closer to home. And her salary for this film, a whopping $11 million, which, get this, was the entire budget of the first Alien film. It really shows you her star power and the changing landscape of blockbuster filmmaking. The financial scale had shifted dramatically since the late 70s. It makes you think about the pressures and expectations that come with those big budgets.
Oh, absolutely. The financial side of filmmaking had evolved significantly by the late 90s.
Okay, so we've covered the basics, the people behind it. Now, for anyone who needs a refresher, what's the story of Alien Resurrection?
Okay, so it's set 200 years after, we thought Ripley was gone. Scientists on a space station, the Auriga, they managed to clone her using, get this, blood samples they got from Furina 161. Why? They want to extract that alien queen embryo that was inside her from Alien 3, and surprise, surprise, they succeed.
But of course, things go wrong. The cloning process has a side effect. This new Ripley is, well, part alien, acid blood, super strength. And the alien queen, well, she's busy making more xenomorphs, which, from what we see, might be smarter, more dangerous than before. This hybrid Ripley, it raises a lot of questions about, who she is, where her loyalties lie. How does the film handle that internal struggle between her human and alien sides?
Yeah, and it's not just that. We have a group of space pirates, Ryder, Pinion, Perlman's characters who show up on the Auriga. Ripley, she ends up teaming up with them to try and stop these evolved aliens from getting to Earth. So it becomes this race against time in, a very confined, a very hostile environment.
It's a familiar setup, right? Isolated locations, scary creatures fighting for survival, but with this twist of, the cloned Ripley, the genetic mixing.
Exactly. It takes those classic alien elements and throws in some pretty radical new ideas, which is, a big reason why the film, well, has divided fans.
Okay, let's dig into some of those behind-the-scenes details, those fun nuggets that give us a peek into how this all came together. We already mentioned Weaver's impressive salary, but she initially turned down the role, so that big paycheck, well, that probably helped sway her.
That just goes to show the persuasive power of money in Hollywood. Speaking of things that didn't make it into the film, Jeunet had this pretty gruesome idea of a mosquito biting Ripley and then, dissolving because of her acid blood. I mean, visually, that would have been striking, if a little disturbing, but they scrapped it. Budgetary reasons. Typical Hollywood.
Ah, the budget. Always the budget. And Winona Ryder's reason for taking the role, pure fangirl enthusiasm, didn't even read the script, just wanted to brag to her brothers about being in an Alien film. That's pretty awesome.
Oh.
Really shows how influential the Alien franchise was. Even established actors wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though Jeunet, he seems proud of the film, he later said he swore off Hollywood after this experience, which suggests it wasn't all smooth sailing. It's not uncommon for international directors to find, the Hollywood system, well, a bit challenging.
It can be, that's for sure. Now, that underwater sequence, they actually built a permanent water tank on the Fox lot. Took almost a week to fill. That's commitment to, practical effects, even in the late 90s when CGI was becoming more common. The actors even went through extensive underwater training. Sigourney Weaver actually missed a lot of the initial training because of her, Broadway commitments. It shows how complicated these big productions are with actors having other things going on. But they pulled it off, and that underwater scene is one of the most memorable parts of the film.
It is, yeah. And then there's the story about Dominique Pignon's line. He kept mispronouncing Easter Bunny, which became this running joke on set. And they ended up changing the line to Santa Claus, which, funnily enough, also appears in Jeunet's The City of Lost Children, which, of course, also starred Ron Perlman. It's those little human moments amidst the, sci-fi horror that make it special.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And that opening line, from Aliens, Newt's line about no real monsters, taking that directly from the previous film, it's subtle but effective. It ties Resurrection back to the existing story, even with this pretty out there premise.
It's a nice touch for sure. Now, H.R. Giger, the guy behind the original creature design, he said he enjoyed the film, which is a big deal considering how important his work is to the alien world. But he was upset about not being credited, which is understandable. His visual style is so integral to the whole franchise.
No doubt. And the budget, well, that had an impact on the film's look and feel. They had to scale back the sets, use more close-ups, create a more claustrophobic feel. You could see how, financial limitations force some creative choices.
Oh, absolutely. Budgets, they're always a factor in filmmaking, and often they lead to, creative problem solving. Here, maybe it created a different kind of tension, a different intimacy than, say, the more expansive environments in Aliens.
And the spaceships. They used practical effects for those. The visual effects supervisors at the time, they didn't think CGI was good enough yet to make realistic-looking spaceships. It's a reminder of how fast technology changes in filmmaking. The Betty, the pirate ship, that was a kit bash model. They even used parts from a real A-10 Warthog aircraft. That's just, that's cool. Gives the ship a very, tangible, almost jury-rigged look.
Definitely. Using real-world model parts, that's clever, and it adds to the visual texture of the film.
Even the cloned Queen's head, that was the original prop from Aliens. They just repainted it. Nice bit of continuity there, even though the rest of her design, well, that changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the film is very clear about where it fits in the timeline. It's set in 2379, a big jump forward, which makes those advancements like cloning feel, well, a bit more believable within the Alien universe.
Right. It establishes its place in the future of the Alien story. Time has passed. Technology has, well, progressed, even if it's in, some unsettling ways.
Okay, get this. The Serenity, that ship from Firefly, the show Joss Whedon created partly because of his experience on Resurrection, it was actually built over the same water tank they used for the underwater scenes in this film. Talk about a, full circle moment.
Wow, that's a fun coincidence, the way creative projects can be, connected in such unexpected ways.
Sigourney Weaver, she actually avoided making eye contact with the newborn creature. She said it was because of her experience filming Girls in the Mist. It's interesting how an actor's real-world experience can, influence their performance in a completely different genre.
Absolutely. It shows a real commitment to, understanding how to portray a character's reaction to something truly alien, how to use nonverbal communication.
And, of course, the very public disagreement between Joss Whedon and Jean-Pierre Jeunet years after the film came out. Whedon called the final product ghastly. And Jeunet, well, he fired back. It really shows how different their visions for the project were and, those creative tensions that can happen on a big film set.
Filmmaking is, it's collaborative, but it can also be, a source of friction when you have strong artistic personalities involved. And Jeunet's later comments about some of Whedon's work, well, that adds another layer to the whole thing.
It does. And the Ripley's costume change, it was inspired by something actress Kim Flowers wore. It's often those little, almost unnoticed details that contribute to the visual style of a film.
Yeah, it shows how ideas can come from anywhere on set and how a willingness to adapt can influence the look of the film.
Those deleted scenes, they're always interesting. More references to Alien 3, different endings for some characters. It's fun to think about what might have been.
Definitely. It gives us a glimpse into, other paths the film could have taken, how those choices could have changed the whole tone, the impact.
Creating the newborn creature, that was a huge undertaking. Jeunet originally wanted to do it all digitally, but the budget wouldn't allow it. So they built this incredibly complex animatronic. It took 9 puppeteers to operate it. And they even digitally removed its genitalia after initially including them. It's a whole story in itself. And it shows how they were blending practical and digital effects at the time. That push and pull between, creative ambition and the realities of the budget.
For sure. And some big names were in the running to direct. David Cronenberg, Danny Boyle, even Peter Jackson. They all passed. It makes you think about the challenges and expectations that come with, directing an Alien sequel.
Absolutely. Even Christie's wrist guns. Those were inspired by Taxi Driver, of all things. A cool little connection that adds a bit of unexpected flair.
It's a reminder that filmmakers get inspiration from, well, all sorts of places, and those connections aren't always, obvious to the audience.
This is interesting. Jeunet initially wanted the main villain to be a woman, but the studio said no. They thought 2 strong female leads was enough. Classic studio interference.
It happens. And it shows how studio preferences can, well, sometimes get in the way of the original creative vision.
All 4 Alien films with Sigourney Weaver,
Yeah.
They have this recurring thing, a dining scene with a sexually suggestive comment. It's an interesting, if maybe a bit unsettling thread that runs through the whole series.
It is, yeah. Makes you wonder what it says about the underlying themes of power, vulnerability, the whole violation of personal space that's so present in the alien world.
So they gave the newborn visible eyes. That was a direct response to criticisms of the previous Alien designs, which didn't have, clear sensory organs. They were listening to the fans, trying to address those perceived inconsistencies.
Interesting. Trying to balance the established mythology with what the audience expects, what they picked up on in the earlier films.
Believe it or not, those burst stomach costumes, Those were inspired by a popular Alien t-shirt. That's just funny. Fan culture, directly influencing a big-budget film.
It's very meta. Shows how connected the creators and the consumers of pop culture can be.
Joss Whedon's original idea for the newborn was completely different. Eyeless, white, 6 limbs, pincers. Can you imagine what that would look like on screen? The creature's design went through some serious changes. Different creative visions can lead to, well, very different results.
Again, yeah. And that scene where Ripley, wakes up as the clone, that was Jeunet's addition. He meant it to symbolize a kind of transformation, like a larva becoming a butterfly. Interesting visual metaphor there.
Yeah, for sure. Even the tube where Ripley is created, the script originally had it as a bed-like case. They changed it to that vertical glass chamber we see in the film. Even small design choices like that can change the whole, the look and feel of a scene.
It's all about those details, creating the right aesthetic, the right mood.
At one point, the film was the 43rd highest-grossing film in the U.S. But it was also the first Alien film not to open at #1. It tells you something about, how it performed commercially compared to, well, the other films and, everything else that was out in 1997.
It does, yeah. And this might seem like a technical detail, but it was the first Alien film to be shot in that 2.39:1 aspect ratio using the Super 35 format. That probably gave it a wider, more cinematic look.
Right. And Whedon, he actually laid out the script like a comic book.
Yeah.
Makes you think about his writing process, how he visualized the story. And then, of course, there was the Dark Horse comic book adaptation, that connection between, film and comics.
Yeah, the Alien world, it lends itself well to that visual storytelling style.
So many people involved in this film,
Yeah.
in front of and behind the camera, were Oscar nominees. It was a project that attracted a lot of serious talent.
It did. Even if the final product was, divisive, the talent involved was top-notch.
This is a fun one. Ron Perlman, his grunting sound is Johnner. That was the same sound he used in Quest for Fire, little Easter egg for fans who, might recognize it.
Little nod to Perlman's previous work. Always fun to, spot those connections.
The names of the weapons, Lacrima 99 and Draco Double Burner, and that AR designation could be a reference to Alien Resurrection, could be something else. Fans love to speculate about these things.
It's part of the fun. Those little mysteries, the way things are named, gives fans something to discuss, to interpret.
And the android names in the Alien series, they follow an alphabetical pattern. Ash, Bishop, Call, and later David. It's subtle, but it adds to the, the overall cohesion of the universe.
Clever way to connect the different films. Little details like that, they add up.
Sigourney Weaver, she specifically wanted that scene where Ripley 8 sees the failed clones. It gets to the heart of those themes of, identity, trauma, everything Ripley's been through.
It shows how invested Weaver was in the emotional journey of the character, the moments she felt were, essential to tell that story.
That shot from inside Leland Orser's character when the alien bursts out, they did that by reversing footage of a camera being pulled out of his throat. Pretty low-tech solution, but effective.
Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. Clever use of, practical effects to create a memorable moment.
And Ripley 7, the failed clone. Sigourney Weaver just stuck her head through a hole in the floor. Sometimes the most straightforward approach is the most effective.
Absolutely. Filmmaking is all about collaboration, finding those practical solutions to bring the fantastical to life.
The scene where Ripley, Mercy kills the deformed clone, that echoes a deleted scene from the original Alien, where Dallas considers doing the same thing to Kane after he's, been infected.
Interesting. Connects back to the first film, those themes of compassion, those tough choices, the harsh realities of surviving in that world.
Christie's line, "I don't trust anyone." It's a little nod back to the original Alien, where we see that same paranoia and distrust among the crew. Little callbacks like that, fans appreciate them.
They do. Those references help to ground the film within the larger story.
Call is the first android in the Alien series to, survive a film without being, seriously damaged. That's significant.
It is a change from the previous films where, androids usually met a pretty bad end.
Now, how they got Ripley's DNA from Fury 161 after, she, jumped into the fire, that's not really explained. A bit of a plot hole.
Yeah, it does raise some questions about, how plausible the whole resurrection is.
The special edition of Alien Resurrection has a scene where Call redirects the Auriga so it crashes in an uninhabited part of Earth.
Yeah.
Seems like they were trying to, address the potential for widespread destruction.
Interesting. Maybe they wanted to, soften the ending a bit.
Early drafts of the script had that final battle taking place on Earth. Lots of different locations. Snowy forest, junkyard, even a maternity ward, all cut for budget reasons. But that Parisian junkyard landing, that stayed as an alternate end. It gives you a sense of the scale Whedon was originally going for.
It does, yeah. And even those, the melting intestines, they did that with a descending platform. Sometimes those visceral effects are achieved with, well, pretty simple mechanics.
It's a reminder of how clever those special effects artists are. And for the third time in the series, the big bad alien gets sucked out into space.
Seems to be the go-to solution for dealing with, the ultimate alien threat.
Jeunet had a lot of freedom to change Whedon's script, and he did. The tone, the execution, it's all quite different from what Whedon originally intended. Characters removed, personalities changed, whole sequences cut. That elevator shaft scene, the farm scene with, cannabis, the newborn was completely different, and that Earth-based ending, gone. That's a major shift in creative vision.
It is. And Whedon, he was really set on that Earth finale. Went through a lot of revisions to try and make it work, within the budget. He wanted to bring the story back to Earth, to that familiar setting, that ultimate confrontation, which, later films kind of touched on.
Yeah, it's interesting, that idea of the newborn being sucked out through a small hole. That was actually considered for Lambert's death in the first Alien film. Funny how those ideas can, resurface, find their way into later films.
It's like a cycle, ideas get revisited, repurposed in new ways.
So Kel's backstory, there's this whole thing about a rebellion of androids. They're called Autons. And she learns about the aliens from a banned book written by a prisoner named Morse that was mostly cut from the film, but it's in the novelization. It gives her character more depth.
Right. Adds to her her motivations, makes her more connected to the events of, Alien 3.
It's a bit of a trope in the Alien films. They introduce characters who seem important, and then, bam, they're killed off pretty quickly. Elgin, General Perez, they both fit that pattern.
Keeps you on your toes. You never know who's going to make it.
The chestburster at the end, they originally wanted Cole to, stab it, not shoot it. A more personal enemy.
More symbolic, too, maybe, taking a more active role in defeating the alien threat.
Okay, the user reviews. They really show how divided people are on this film. Some loved it. Action-packed, fun. Others hated it. They didn't like the plot, Ripley's character, the design of the newborn. A lot of people felt it was too different in tone from the earlier films, less suspense, less horror. Roger Ebert, he even called it one of the worst films of 1997. That's harsh.
Yeah, it's a film that it provokes strong reactions, that shift in tone, the more sci-fi elements like cloning, that unconventional newborn design. Some people like that it, takes risks, goes in new directions. Others, not so much.
The production had trouble finding studio space because so many other films were shooting at the same time. It gives you a sense of, how busy things were in Hollywood at the time. And that ending, yeah, some people really hated it. And the CGI, well, it hasn't aged well, especially the swimming aliens and the Earth re-entry scene. Alien Resurrection is actually the shortest Alien film, which might be why it feels a bit, rushed to some people. And that Lacrima 99 weapon, we only see its main function once. It's all very divisive.
It is. Bold choices, a big departure from what came before. That's what makes it, so memorable, even if it's not always for the right reasons.
Okay, so big picture, Alien Resurrection, unique. Controversial. That whole cloning thing, the human-alien hybrid, that's what sets it apart from the start. Jeunet style, it's very different from the other films. And all those behind-the-scenes stories, well, they tell the story of a very particular production. Whedon's script, it's there, but the final film, it went in a very different direction. And that's why, well, people have such strong opinions about it.
Exactly. They brought Ripley back, but in a way that was unexpected, to say the least. And they introduced some pretty out there ideas, some really grotesque designs. It's a film that pushes boundaries.
So here's something to think about.
Yeah.
They went to some pretty extreme lengths to bring Ripley back. And those new creatures, well, they were something else. What does this film say about those big sci-fi franchises? The pressure to bring back characters, to keep upping the ante, to keep audiences, well, coming back for more. Does Alien Resurrection's weirdness, its willingness to be, totally out there, does that actually contribute to its place in the alien world? Something to ponder.